Hello, and thank you everyone for taking the time to be here. Welcome to this presentation of the National Women's Caucus of the Green Party of the United States for Trans Day of Remembrance, or as some in the transgender community refer to it as Trans Day of Resilience, because the trans community is not going to stand by and allow this constant and continuous murder of our siblings, of our trans siblings to continue. My name is Shannel Pittman, and I sit here as a representative of chiefly the Young Eco-Socialist Caucus, but also as a member of the Women's Caucus, the Lavender Caucus, which is the LGBTQIA caucus within the Green Party, the Black Caucus, the Forming Disability Caucus, and the Forming Indigenous Caucus. Every panelist that you will hear tonight sits here as a member of both the Women's Caucus and the aforementioned Lavender Caucus. Trans Day of Remembrance is a memorial service of sorts for the transgender siblings that we have lost to violence. As of a couple of days ago, the number worldwide stood at 350 lives lost. I'm not transgender myself, but I have something called polycystic ovarian syndrome, which, although I'm going out of my way to hide it, provides me with characteristics that can be seen as masculine. I make jokes about it, but I'm very serious when I say that I'm an extremely hairy young woman. Many members in my family have PCOS, and some of them have full facial hair. There are some in this world that would say, because a woman has a full beard, she cannot be considered a woman, and thus is the murder of her losing her life to murder in a bathroom is justifiable because she is a woman with a full beard. I and the Green Party say that that is not acceptable, which is why I felt it was important for me to do what I could to make a point to be here to help facilitate this roundtable today. You'll hear more in understanding exactly what Trans Day of Remembrance is from our panelists, specifically Cynthia Bryan-Kate. But before I forget, I want to just go back and clarify for you what a caucus is, because I've used that word multiple times just now. A caucus is a formation within the Green Party with the power to make changes to the platform and the rules of the national party comprised of a specific demographic of Greens, with the core goal being to make sure that the needs of those Greens, the disabled Greens, the queer Greens, the Black Greens, the young Greens, the Latinx Greens, and disabled and Indigenous Greens are having their needs met within this party, and making sure that this platform accounts for all that we need to be activists in this political sphere. If you have any more questions or are seeking to get involved in a caucus, you can go to gp.org to find a full list of caucuses and how to join them. I'm gonna take it over to Cynthia Bryan-Kate to give you a better understanding of Trans Day of Remembrance, as well as a few definitions to clarify a few things for you. Take it away, Cynthia.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Cynthia Bryan-Kate. Please excuse my lack of understandable eye contact. I happen to be legally blind, and that factors into the first of the caucuses I am representing tonight. I happen to be a member of the Forming Disability Caucus, I also come here as a member of the Women's Caucus, and I am very grateful that they have decided to host tonight's event. I am also a proud member of the Lavender Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, Queer, Intersex, Asexual, and Related People Caucus, which is why it's LGBTQIA plus symbol. And I also am very grateful to Shannel for helping me become an advisor to the Youth Caucus. I've been a Green as long as I've been in any political party. It's the only party I've ever been in. I'm proud to be a Green because we have a platform, values, and pillars, which actually include people based on including every diversity that we can think to include. I've been organizing events on gender and sexuality, and including particularly Transgender Day of Remembrance ever since I came out on all this stuff. I happen to be a transgender woman. I happen to be an intersex chimera. These terms will come up and be explained in a couple of minutes in definitions. I also do educational work for people on the asexual spectrum, and I've been helping organize things, as I said, on TDOR as it's acronymized since 2002, the third year it was ever done.
We're here for Trans Day of Remembrance, which Cynthia will get into a little bit later as we go into discussion. But let's take a moment to introduce the rest of our panelists. Go ahead, Veronika.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad that you cared enough to be here. I appreciate you coming here on this Transgender Day of Remembrance. My name is Veronika Fimbres, and I'm a trans living legend and a trans pioneer and a couple other things. I'm a nurse, retired now, and I'm a Vietnam veteran. And I've been trans since 1978, but I think I've been myself all the time. So I'm 68 years old. I'm in the Elders Caucus, the Green Party, the Green Caucus, the Women's Caucus, the Lavender Caucus. I'm in many caucuses, but I'm honored to be a part of the Green Party, and I ran for governor in 2018.
Yes, and I'm amazed to share this room in this moment with you, Veronika. You're one of those surviving people. As I know, most trans women don't make it to 35. Our last panelist is much younger, a fellow young eco-socialist, Ms. Avery Seal.
Hello, everybody. My name is Avery Seal. I'm a 19-year-old trans woman from New Jersey. I'm a member of the Young Eco-Socialist Caucus, and I'm also a member of my college's LGBT student union, where we work on education, outreach, and support for LGBT students. I've been a member of the Green Party since 2020, so I'm pretty new here. But I joined because I feel that it was the best party to represent the LGBT community and other marginalized communities, and I align strongly with their values. And I'm happy to be here to spread awareness about the issues that trans people face with the Green Party.
Fantastic, wonderful. Now everyone knows who our informers will be tonight. Cynthia mentioned there are some words and definitions you may hear as people discuss. Now go ahead, Cynthia, and explain to people those vocabulary words that they may not be familiar with.
Okay, so first of all, we have transgender, but we also have cisgender, which have both been said in the intro. While there have been some confusions and controversies over some of these words, they both come from chemistry. In chemistry, if all the components of a compound are of the same general type, that's called cis. If they're different or have changed, have gone across, that's trans. So a cisgender person is somebody whose gender identity and expression match the sex that they were assigned at birth, while a transgender person is somebody who that does not quite match, and a transgender person considers themselves, knows themselves lives and expresses a gender other than the one expected at birth, whether that be one the opposite of what was expected or another gender entirely. Assigned sex. That's the idea that when you're born, a doctor looks down at you, makes a stereotypical assumption based on what's between your legs that you're one sex or another, that you will be expected to live as one gender or another. And that is proven to be quite inaccurate and outdated because of intersex. Intersex is the current scientific and community term to refer to people whose reproductive biology is somewhere in between or even outside what the medical definitions of male and female claim, whether that be by chromosomes, hormones, internal and or external genitalia, or any and all sex characteristics. Bodily autonomy and informed consent. Everybody has the right to know their own body, to experience their life in their body, to make decisions, including medical ones, about their body with full consent only when they've been given accurate, sensitive, detailed information about it. Unfortunately, one of the rights issues intersex people face is, as babies and children, having to avoid being put into forced sterilizing surgery to make their bodies fit arbitrary definitions of male and female, the standards that I mentioned before, that everybody is expected to think apply to everyone when they just don't. Non-binary, people who do not feel that the labels man and woman apply to them, who do not consider themselves men or women, and who are some other gender, and there's a whole range and rainbow of other genders for that. Gender non-conforming. That refers to anyone who in any way steps outside the expected stereotypes on gender identity and expression. Gender identity, your internal sense of what gender you consider yourself, when you consider yourself a man, a woman, or someone else entirely. Gender expression / presentation is all the ways you show up to the world: hair, makeup, perfume, cologne, clothing, interests, activities, hobbies, all that stuff. Sexual orientation is your attraction to other people sexually. There's also romantic orientation. I hope that most people here have heard of lesbian, gay, or bisexual. I can go into that at some point if people haven't heard of those. Actually, I'll do a quick version. Gay is someone who knows himself as a man who's attracted sexually or romantically or both to other people who identify as men. Lesbian is the same thing for people who consider and know themselves to be women. Bisexual, though it's also sometimes called pan, omni, and other words for people who feel that it should go beyond just man or women, all the people who are attracted to more than one possible type of gender person. Asexual is a spectrum. All the people who do not experience sexual attraction to other people, whether that be not at all or only under certain circumstances. As far as what we're here tonight, I will give you a couple less cuddly terms. A hate crime, a violent crime committed against someone based on their perceived minority status. Doesn't have to be that they are that minority, but a hater sees them that way and wants to send them a message, and their community a message of violence, fear, and terror to not be themselves. Overkill. Unfortunately, we're going to be talking about violence and murder as an issue. Unfortunately, that can happen to anyone who steps outside gender stereotypes. And overkill is when the killers want to erase that person even existed, with multiple methods of murder or incredibly high numbers of stabs, shots, blows, or whatever they're doing. Dead naming. Calling somebody by a name that they were expected at birth rather than their preferred name they know themselves as. Sadly, this still happens in the media and other places to trans, intersex, non-binary, non-conforming people when things like hate crimes happen. And that brings us to Transgender Day of Remembrance / Resilience. Did I cover all that, I hope?
Yep, you covered everything and then some. Are you going to explain Trans Day of Resilience now? Or is that my job?
I just needed a second.
Go ahead.
Okay. Transgender Day of Remembrance, now also called Resilience, is a worldwide event started in 1999 in the Bay Area in California by Gwen Smith and other transgender activists to highlight and address the issues raised by the murders of Shannel Pittman and Rita Hester. The official date is November 20th as the anniversary of Pickett's murder. And the goals of Transgender Day of Remembrance are to address and raise awareness on issues of discrimination, violence, and murder directed against transgender, intersex, non-binary, and non-conforming people, to commemorate lives of people who've been murdered within the past year, both worldwide and in the US, and to show the resilience of the trans, intersex, non-binary, non-conforming communities, friends, families, people identify as allies and supporters, and anyone who basically thinks people should be allowed to live free lives free from violence and murder. So the resilience is we're all standing up in the face of this and saying no to violence and yes to free and safe gender expression. That sentence explains TDR in one sentence, I hope. And the thing is, we're standing up to show that we are saying no to violence, which is intersectional, which is the intersection of racism, misogyny, hatred against women and femininity, transphobia, homo and biphobia, classism, economic discrimination, anti-immigrant bias, anti-sex worker bias, ableism, and every other bigotry that can come together in one place. We are addressing that. And by the way, I don't know if we got around to doing the land acknowledgement, but we are doing this webinar as every person in the United States is on land that was stolen by force from the indigenous native populations that had lived and walked here for centuries and millennia. And we should acknowledge that, especially because the roots of the violence TDR addresses are partly colonial. When the conquistadors came to these continents, the Americas, one of the first things they did was to try to wipe out all the trans, non-binary, non-conforming people they could. Intersex wasn't a word then. And we're showing that we say no to that, and we say yes to people living freely.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, absolutely. And since you said it, I don't need to say it now. So in the understanding of the different intersectionalities in which trans women exist, we have a legendary trans Black woman here to speak on the experience of trans Black women and what it is that they face. Veteran person with as much work in government as any Green I've ever known, with 14 years within the city of San Francisco. Vietnam veteran Veronika Fimbres. Go ahead, Veronika.
Wow, what an introduction. That was pretty. I might have you, I'm glad we're recording this so I can hear that again. Hi, everyone. My name is Veronika. I've been Black all of my life. I've been trans since 1978. I think I was 25 then. I'm 68 now. I've survived AIDS. I've been a longtime AIDS survivor since 1987. I've made it through, but it wasn't easy. And I'm so glad that we have young people that are picking up the mantle and carrying on, because soon I may not be able to. But nonetheless, Black people have been marginalized so long, for over 400 years. We weren't even considered a whole person for the sake of the Constitution. But under this particular presidency, we've known, and there's been more violence and more hate towards trans people and people of non-conforming genders. And we need to be aware of that. So I want to give you some facts first, and I'm gonna go into a little about myself. As of August 2020, the list of trans murders surpassed the entire year of 2019 of the trans folk that were murdered. 1/5 of murders occurred, or 22% occurred in the victim's own house, which tells you something. In the victim's own house it happened. As of October the 7th, 2020, at least 31 trans people have been murdered, and non-conforming people have been murdered in the United States. this particular Transgender Day of Remembrance, the modes of their murder have been as horrible as burned alive, murdered, suffocated, and numerous ways to murder people. 350 trans people have been killed in 2020, the global scene. Central and South America, there have been 287 deaths. The most deaths occur and come from Brazil, which is 43% or 152 people. Mexico, there's been 57 deaths. The Human Rights Commission says that in the United States, up to this moment we're talking, there have been 37 deaths this year so far, and we still haven't made it out of this year. So we want to end those deaths. Now, what I can tell you from my own experience is that I think that the churches and the way it's presented to people, they have wrong ideas. They think that trans people, it was pointed out to me the other day that trans people, if they use the bathroom, they're going there to do other than use the bathroom. Well, I'm here to tell you, when I go to the bathroom, I go to the bathroom. And there's no plot to molest kids and eat them and whatever else they think. All of that is wrong and it's not true. So as a nurse, I will tell you that we all open and close our eyes. We all die the same way, mouth open, eyes rolled in the back of your head. Your blood is red, mine is red. The violence against trans women is mostly, and especially trans women of color, is mostly by Black men. Now I say this because it's not usually discussed. There's always that little elephant in the room. Oh, they're being murdered, they're being murdered. Who's doing it, who's doing it? And like I told you that the murders that take place in the home are by people that know these trans women. They know they're trans and they use that big thing that they used to use for gay people. Oh, I didn't know what to do. They came on to me and it was a horrible experience and I had to kill them. Well, that's not true. And people know what they're getting. They just don't like the way it turns out. And also the way women raise their sons need to have respect for women. There's domestic violence, there's all kinds of things out there, but for trans women, it's multiplied tenfold. So as a Black trans woman, I would tell you that if I leave my house feeling sensational, wanting to feel that way, going shopping, doing something, and I'm murdered because I exist, not because I've done anything to anybody. They might murder me and I'm a nurse. I would be the first person to help them if they needed anything, but they don't know that. So I'd just be a statistic. We have to end this murder pattern. We have to make people awake. That people need to get woke as to what is going on with the community, and in particular the trans community, because Blacks are being murdered at exorbitant rates just for being, and we have to put an end to that. So I'm here to tell you, let me share one of my experiences. This is silly to me, but I went to the hospital. They put me in the room with a pregnant woman. She and I were both laying in the same room and of course in different beds, but we were talking. And then all of a sudden they came and they said, we're gonna move you. And she said, why are you moving me? I'm sitting here talking to this lady. We're having a good conversation. They moved her. I said, oh, they're probably moving you because they just read my chart. And it was because I was a trans woman. They rushed her out of the room. So that's insane. People don't, I mean, there doesn't have to be that. One of my greatest things that I really feel proud about is I was a nurse at Camp Aurantique. It was a camp that was shown on, what's her name, Jenner's show, whatever her name is. I forgot her name now. But anyway, it was shown on her show, but it's a camp for young trans people. And the ages range from about, I think, 5 or 6 to 18. It is amazing to see the progress that has been made with hormone therapy and the progress that has been made psychologically and emotionally with young kids who come out and say, Mother, I'm not Bob, I'm Jill. or I'm whatever. And the parents accept that. They care enough about their kids to investigate, see how they can best serve their child. I know a nurse I work with, she has a trans son. She said, I still keep the old pictures to remind me that, you know, I did have a baby, but I respect my son's wishes. And this is what I found throughout that camp that summer that I worked there, was that fathers, grandfathers, uncles, aunts, all family members came and rallied and supported these young trans children. Now, I'm old school. I'm 68. I don't know how much time I've got. Nobody does. It's all good. You just live your life to the fullest. But I don't want my life taken because I exist. It's not fair. It's not fair. So we need to watch our language. We need to watch how we treat people, and we need to be respectful of all people. When we talk about the Green Party, we're talking about 94 nations, and we're talking about social economic justice. And I mean, I can go on with that because being a prostitute and on drugs and all that, I've overcome a lot. But there's other things I could have been doing. So I just wanted to say thank you for coming, and that's my time.
Yes, thank you, Veronika. It is important that we get this wisdom from older trans people, because very often people are cut down in their youth when they're trans women. And to transition poorly, I apologize, to a trans youth that is, you know, surviving, living her truth, and being amazing in all that she attempts to do, my fellow young eco-socialist, Avery Seal.
Hello, everybody. So despite the amazing progress that we've made over the years, thanks to wonderful transgender living legends like Veronika, there are still a lot of things that we need to do to help our trans youth. You know, growing up, I was raised as a male. Obviously, I was taught from a very young age what was acceptable and what was wrong for me to do. And what was wrong was anything that was perceived as feminine or gay. And I wanted to wear the same clothes as my sister. I wanted to play with the same toys as my sister, and I wanted to be treated like my sister. But everybody was telling me, that's wrong. Don't do that. You're a boy. Take that dress off, put that Barbie down. You're a boy. And as I grew up, I continued to have these expectations and these roles put on me, and I was always uncomfortable with them. And it got particularly worse in high school, obviously, with puberty, physical body changes, and more gender roles. High school is not a safe or welcoming environment for trans youth, or really anybody who's LGBT in high school. Being LGBT made you a target for bullying, for violence. A lot of us were scared to even go to our LGBT club, because once you went to that club, you were a target for bullies, and everybody in that school would know of your identity or spread rumors about your identity within an hour of you going to that club. You could not openly be yourself most of the time. Queer students were verbally and physically assaulted. I had a friend who received weekly, almost daily death threats at school and over social media because she wanted to live openly as herself. And so with the physical assaults, the verbal assaults, we were put outside of social life at school. And there wasn't a point in reporting this harassment or this bullying because we were not supported by the staff. The staff was very flippant about things that happened to us. The bullying, when we reported it, was never punished. It was never talked about to the bully. And the teachers themselves did not support us. They were constantly misgendering us, dead naming us, using the wrong pronouns. And trans kids were expected to use the bathroom of their assigned gender unless they wanted to go to the disabled bathroom, which was far away from any class and was hard to get to. And, now we can't even escape this bullying and this harassment when we get home and leave school, because now we have smartphones. So you can't even go on Snapchat at this point without somebody messaging you and calling you a slur or harassing you. So it became a very solitary and hostile experience in high school. I felt very alone. I felt like I could not live authentically as myself. I was scared to. I felt like I would be a victim of violence if I was, because I saw other queer students being victims of violence. And, when I did try eventually towards the end of high school, well, I did become a victim of violence. So all of that, it has contributed to a lot of the mental health issues that I face and that a lot of other trans youth face. I'll be honest, I don't know another trans kid my age who has not been diagnosed with severe depression, self-harmed, attempted suicide, or been admitted to a psych ward, because we still don't feel accepted. We still feel like outsiders. And even once you get to a psych ward, once you try to get that mental health treatment, oftentimes the mental health professionals don't support us anyway. I was recently in a psych ward earlier this year, and one of my first interactions with the staff was during some sort of intake, and she said to another hospital staff, he identifies as a trans woman, and his sister gave him a bad reaction when he came out. And so obviously that's my very first interaction with this nurse. Instant, just not even trying. And that continued throughout my stay in the hospital. I was constantly dead named over the loudspeaker for lunch. So they would call my name, my dead name, and everybody in that hospital would hear my dead name, everybody on that unit. The staffs would not use my pronouns. My dead name was on the whiteboard by the front desk, and my own social worker never used my proper name and never used my right pronouns, even right in front of me. And the other patients there were no more welcoming. They were no more accepting. There was one other trans person there, and we were both called freaks. We were referred to as it. We were harassed by the other patients. And just like how I experienced it in high school, the staff there didn't care, because they were also the ones doing that harassment. And, one time I actually finally lost my cool a bit at another patient because he was insistent on referring to me as an it. So I yelled at him, and I was the one that was sent to my room, and he was the one that got to sit down and keep watching TV with the rest of the patients. So he was harassing me, and when I stood up for myself, I was the one who was punished. And so, that whole experience in the psychiatric hospital, I'll be honest with you, probably was worse for my mental health. These people who were trying to help me did not help me. They made me feel worse about my gender identity. And, when I got out of the hospital, my psychiatrist told me that I needed to accept the body that God gave me. He outright denied that I was trans, and he told me that God made me this way and I need to accept it. So when trans youth, people like me, when we are being beaten and harassed and bullied at school, and then we are being harassed and denied of our existence when we try to get that mental health treatment and we try to live authentically as ourselves, well, we're not doing enough for trans youth. We need to fix this situation in schools, and we need to get affirming mental health care for our trans youth. Because if we don't, there will be more dead trans kids. And that's why I'm here today, to spread this awareness about what trans kids face. Thank you.
Mhm.
Sorry. Unmute yourself, Shannel.
Sorry. Okay. So as I was saying, yes, thank you for bringing that up, Avery. I kind of see what's going on. I have a trans nephew myself, but I know that as much fear and worry that I face as a disabled, queer, Black and Muslim woman, that some aspects of that fear will never be the same. And the lived experience that you have as a young trans woman and the different intersections that, you know, we both have as younger disabled folk, we see how that problem of society not being willing to exist correctly for you when you're trans and disabled, how that affects you. And I mean, next speaking, we have a disabled transgender woman who has experience in navigating that world as well. She could probably explain a little bit more better at that than I can, obviously. Go on ahead, Cynthia.
Okay, well, first of all, I do education so people will be more understanding and less clueless about my life and those of other people. I do activism because I've been through a lot of really unfun things, and I want that to stop happening to me and to other people. On the education front, I'm sorry, I apologize that I almost forgot one category that includes my life and other people I know and love, chimera. That's when twins, triplets, or other multiple fetuses merge in the womb and you wind up with a person being born in a composite body. While not all are intersex, if the siblings are of different sexes, you get an intersex chimera. And that's how come I have the experience of being someone with a composite body. In addition to a visual disability, I also just have a body that is asymmetrical, and I have two different arms from two different bodies, which is why holding the iPhone that's doing my video is always as interesting as buttoning my blouses. So I do education on this stuff so people know what this means. And so people, instead of saying, ew, what's that, say, wow, I've heard of this. I was so proud when a friend's kid, who's now come out as various points of the gender and sexuality rainbow themselves, told a gender-rigid classmate who said, oh, you can only be one or the other, man or woman. She said, I know Miss Cynthia, and she's both. My whole life, I've been doing this kind of education. And I've also been encountering the kind of discrimination and violence that was mentioned, the so-called horrible panic defense. I've had people try attacking me because I would date them. I was open about myself, but they would then flip out and say, ew, you led me on. I never said anything except that I am trans and I am intersex. I do all this, I do the work I do because things like this happen. I do bathroom rights advocacy. As Veronika was saying, many of us get treated badly in bathrooms. I've had people jump me in bathrooms saying that they were going to beat me to death just for the crime of doing number one and number two in a potty. I had to scream at one of them in an exorcist voice to get them to lay off of me. I've had everything from campus cops to regular cops harass me, which makes me try to advocate for better police oversight, so that people know cops don't get to get away with this just because they wear a badge or because they wear a campus badge. Okay, I've been suicidal multiple times in my life, and I've dealt with some really hardcore depression to the point of having attempted a couple times. I've used that experience to be able to try helping counsel and just generally handhold other trans, intersex, non-binary, non-conforming people. I'm a trained crisis and suicide hotline operator on things like the Trans Lifeline, because I feel that if I have to, I will save my entire community, one person, one life at a time. I do Transgender Day of Remembrance activism because I was nearly murdered 20 years ago in my hometown on suburban Long Island for the, quote, crime, unquote, of walking home with a friend from a cool movie we'd seen that night. Every label on sexuality and gender was conflated by the haters. They didn't see me as trans, intersex, chimera. They saw a fag they wanted to kill. And I had to run for my life, being hunted for sport, as I found myself in a sweaty ball on my aunt's floor, having gotten home safely, no thanks to the haters. I swore to myself as a hardcore comic book nerd trans woman, F this. If nobody else is going to be Wonder Woman for me, then I will strap on those bracelets and do the Diana Prince spin around in my life from now on, forever if need be, to make it clear to people that you don't get to hate, you don't get to hurt, you don't get to kill me or anyone like me. And that's why I've been doing education on this for over 20 years. I've spoken at 1,000 panels, workshops, rallies, protests, because I had no real resources, other people or anything to help me out when I was coming of age. I came out at Avery's age, but did not have any of the knowledge that I'm amazed she has or the courage she has. I've spoken at everywhere from graduate college all the way down to middle school and probably even a couple elementary schools at this point. And I will keep doing what I can. I will, as I said, save the world for my community, one life at a time if I gotta, educate the world one person at a time if I gotta. And that's why I do this work here, and I thank you for having me here tonight.
Well, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Shannel tipped off, so I'm going to segue. I guess I'm going to segue to not leave people waiting. I'm going to segue into oh, Shannel's back. I'll let her do the segue. Go ahead, Shannel. We're segueing, and your mic is muted, Shannel.
You off mute?
You might have to unmute her, but I can't see her name here. Okay, here. I got it. Sorry.
Okay. Thank
A
you.
lot of people. That's a good thing.
We're live, all the way live.
So yes, there was a lot of heavy information there. And although, as Veronika mentioned earlier, there have, as of a couple of days ago, been 350 trans people killed across the world, we don't want to necessarily stop this conversation in such a depressing place. We want to know what we can do to make things better, how we can make sure that there's a situation of, not 350 more next year. We're not doing that. That's not the plan. This is Trans Day of Remembrance and Trans Day of Resilience. But the question comes, what do we do? How can we help? What can we do to make it better? What's needed to change the situation? And to further discuss that, we have our panelists speaking on that again, because as trans women, they would know. Go ahead, Veronika.
I think number one, the strongest thing you can do as a person, whether you're trans or whatever you are, is be yourself. I think one of the weird things that I always remember your parents and people always say be yourself. They're gonna love you. Be yourself. They're gonna love you, love you, love you, love you. And then when you come out and say, I'm trans, all of a sudden they pull the rug from under you. Yeah, I'm like, how? Wait, I thought you were gonna love me no matter what I was. I thought you told me to be myself, and now that I'm myself, it's uncomfortable for you, and therefore I'm put in a box, or I'm ostracized. I'm kicked out of my house. I'm a teenager. I'm on the street. People are taking advantage of me. How do you deal with that? So one thing is, the first thing is to be true to yourself, in spite of the obstacles that you face, in spite of the realization that you could be murdered. I'm true to myself. I walk out the door. I know I could be murdered, but chances aren't very likely. But if I am murdered, the first thing you should tell them to do is look under my fingernails, because I'm going to have DNA all over the place, because I'm not going out without a fight. So I told my parents this a long time ago. If anybody tells you, Mom and Dad, that I'm murdered or that I killed myself, no, it's not true, that I was murdered, because I wouldn't kill myself. I've been there. I've had thoughts. I've entertained. I'm a human just like everybody else. I was a teenager and went through everything that everybody's going through, the angst, the transitional period. And it doesn't get harder. It does get easier as time goes on. So one of the things you can do is you can mentor as an older person. I try to mentor. I try to share. I share my experiences as far as medical, what Avery said about what she experienced in the mental health hospital. I find that just horrible, that nobody should have to go through that. But then I've been through it. I've worked both sides. I've been a patient and a staff nurse there, and I've seen the differences. So one of the things that I did here in San Francisco is I helped to change the way that medical practitioners practice medicine here. I spoke at University UC San Francisco. I spoke on a panel. I worked with doctors to teach them how to work with trans patients, how to work with female to male, male to female. I had documentation changed by Department of Surveillance and Epidemiology, because they kept throwing trans with the men. And I was offended by that. So I said, don't come here unless you bring the real facts for trans people. And through that study, they found out that 65% of Black trans here had HIV and AIDS. That's quite a large number, but we wouldn't have found that out because they were throwing us with the men. So there's changes made and everybody can take a part in it. Number one, first thing you do, take care of your mental health. If nobody else takes care of it, you be the keeper of your mental health. If you need to do something to keep, sometimes I get so angry, I have to leave the room. But I'll leave the room because I'll have my peace of mind, knowing that if I stayed there, I wouldn't be pretty. Prettiness would walk out the door and wouldn't come back. So that way I ventilate, I get out of my system. One of the things that works for me when I'm under pressure or anything happens, I deep breathe, or I sing one of my favorite songs, like from The Sound of Music, any of those songs, Walk Around the Block. It makes me feel comfortable. It makes me feel at peace. That works for me. Find your sweet spot, what works for you to calm you down. Deep breathe, think good thoughts, and keep living your life. Keep showing them who you are and that you're an individual, because people have changed attitudes. They said, oh, I thought you were a bitch. And I said, and I'm not. And they said, oh no, you're really nice. I like you. Well, I said, well, I can be a bitch. That's the reality of it. But I am who I am, and I'm proud. I claim everything that's mine. And you should too. Be proud of yourself. The people that you interact with will respect you. You'll respect yourself. Do mental building things. If people don't call you by your correct name or your dead name, take the scissors and cut them out of your life. If they don't respect you, you don't need them. Cut them right out of your life. I've done it. I feel better for having done it. And you can do it too. So those are the things that I say in moving forward. Knowledge is power. Now, one more thing I'm going to tell you is this one story. It's pretty sad, but think about it. A girlfriend of mine was sitting in her car in Oakland, and she was with two other girlfriends, and a guy came up to her, a handsome Black guy, and said, hey, baby, what's up? What you doing? And she said, hey, I'm trans. So his buddy made fun of him, and he came back to the car and shot and killed her, blew her brains out in her own car. And she was honest with him. Her name was Brandy, and it's covered in the paper. Tell people up front if they don't know. If they don't know, tell them how to refer to you. Don't call me that. My name is Veronika. If you have a question or not sure about my sexuality, ask me. And then if you ask the wrong question, I'll tell you it's none of your business, or maybe it is, but ask me. Don't just make a decision, sir, miss, ma'am, whatever. It's not whatever, it's Veronika. If you're not clear, just call me by my name. You stipulate how people treat you. You make sure that you put yourself out there. Say, hey, my name is Avery. Oh, I don't care. This is my name and this is who I am. I'm Avery. I'm Cynthia Brian Kate, or I'm whoever you are, just be yourself and be strong in being yourself. Be proud of who you are, because that will last longer than this other stuff. You can take that with you. That's it.
That was beautiful as usual, Veronika. Avery, how do you think people in your age group who are trans can move forward and keep going? And what do you feel that youth need for increased survival as trans youth?
Well, I think the big thing comes in our schools, because that's where trans youth spend most of their time, obviously. And well, we don't get the support that we need in that school. We need a safe space for trans youth to talk and discuss, where they know they can go to that safe space and not get assaulted when they walk out. Because that was my experience in high school, that the LGBT club was not safe to go to. So we need to protect their safe space, make sure they have a place that they can talk. We need teachers who actively support them, who don't read off our dead names at attendance and actually use pronouns. And we need proper mental health care that is gender affirming for young trans people. And we need to actually do something about the bullying that trans kids and other LGBT kids face. We need to actually punish the bullies, and we need to support the trans kids. And I think ultimately for trans people, for helping them, what we can do next would be education, outreach, and support. We need to educate people about our experience. We need to educate them about what exactly it means to be trans. For example, I had a coworker, he's not even much older than me, but he said, oh, so a trans woman, is that a girl who wants to be a boy or a boy? And, I had to sit down, I had to talk to him, I had to educate him about it, the trans experience. And I have to walk him through everything. I need to educate him. And I think that as long as the person isn't totally hateful, I think that education is great. I've tried to educate as many people as possible. And outreach, if you can go to any trans event, if you yourself can educate about about trans people and things like that, that's great. Just if you can go and help the community as much as you can, that's great. And support trans people emotionally, support them if they're experiencing any type of discrimination or harassment at work or school or anywhere. Once we do that, once we can educate and have outreach and support trans people, I think that will really help the situation amongst trans youth. Once we do that, we can help target the mental health issues that we're facing, and we can target the bullying that we face and the violence that we face. And it would be great for us. It would make being trans a much better experience, because right now it's scary. But once we do that, it will be infinitely better.
Anything else, Avery? I'm just trying to make sure I didn't miss anything.
I don't think so.
Okay, just making sure. Go ahead, Cynthia. I know you've got ideas.
Yeah, okay. First of all, I agree with everything that was said about education and outreach being very important. I also think that Greens are in a special place in all this. Because we are the one political party I know of that actually officially supports transgender, intersex, non-binary, gender non-conforming people. Is in our 4 pillars, it's in our 10 key values, it's in multiple planks of our GP United States platform. So we are in a good place to start from on this. And okay, if you're green and you're going to want to run for public office of anything, from the person who registers dog and cat licenses all the way up to President of the United States, then you should be prepared to make acceptance, equality, dignity, respect, and safety for trans, intersex, non-binary, non-conforming people an important or even central part of your campaign. In 2016, when Jill Stein ran for president, she made stopping intersex genital mutilation, the non-consensual sterilizing surgeries on intersex babies and kids, she made stopping that a central part of her campaign. She derailed her own speeches multiple times to say, this is an urgent issue. If you're not going to run for office, but you're going to help a campaign and be on the staff, then you make sure that not only are you educated and open on this, but that whoever the heck you're staffing for, that candidate is just as up on this as you are, and every bit as willing to bring these issues to the fore and say, this gets covered in our campaign. If you're not going to be on a campaign, but you're still green, that's a major thing. Again, we're the party that cares about this. So you make it clear to everyone in this party to be better on this if they're not already awesome on it, to make sure people outside this party, when they say, why the heck are you green? What's that? You say, we are the awesome party that I know because we care about these people and we want gender diversity to be safe for people to freely express their gender. Going to events like this is something you can do. Educating yourself on all the topics, whether you're trans, intersex, non-binary, non-conforming, or cis or non-intersex, or any of it, we can all be educating ourselves and others. You can even just go around people you know, and heck, people you don't know, people among your friends, your family, your hobby circle, and say, people should be more informed, educated, and open and accepting on this. And that person in the grocery line who says something stupid, you tell them, that ain't cool. You don't talk about people like this. That person in the grocery line who says, wow, I never knew about this, but I've heard cool stuff about trans, intersex, non-binary, non-conforming, whatever people. You thank that person. Just the act of being open and accepting on this is revolutionary. Educating yourself and others, advocating for yourself and others, those are all even steps further. But yes, we can walk the Green Party into being even better on this than we already are.
Okay, is there anything else that you want to say, Cynthia, before we move on to the question and answer segment?
No, I think that covers it. I mean, there's a million other, oh, one thing. I don't know if you got to flash it, but if people want more information about TDOR as an event, the one website is tdor.info. The other website, Transgender European Union, that's where a lot of the other info is. That's where info on the various stories and cases of what's happened to people and various summaries and stories from previous events. tgeu.org, they have the Transgender Murder Monitor Project, from which we've gotten a lot of the stories that we have been referencing tonight.
Okay, and before we go into the question and answer segment with the questions that you guys submitted earlier, I just wanted to take a moment to once again thank the National Women's Caucus for hosting this important panel. There will be more like this coming out of the Women's Caucus as well as the National Diversity Committee in times to come. We're gonna make a point to let it be clear across the party about the different things that people are dealing with so we can all become better informed as a community and as a party, so that we can make sure that we're not the reason that someone decides they can't be surviving anymore, that we're not contributing in any way, shape, or form to the conditions that would make a marginalized person want to end it all. That's not us, that's not the Green Party. We're supportive, we're affirming, and as we go through, we're gonna keep learning how to support, love, and affirm one another. But let's get into these questions because people had things they want to know, and this next question is actually just a pretty big one. So I'm gonna let the conversation like be as open and flowy as it could, just kind of speak with each other where you can just bounce it off each other and see how it goes. Someone wanted to know what y'all thought was the most important legislative priorities to help trans folks in 2021. You can go ahead first this time, Avery.
Okay. I would say we need to do something about the homelessness amongst trans people. There's a huge epidemic of homelessness amongst the trans community, especially amongst LGBT youth, actually. I can't remember the exact statistic, but trans youth, LGBT youth are disproportionately affected by homelessness. And the Trump administration sometime over the past 4 years actually removed protections for trans people in homeless shelters. So we need to bring back those protections so that trans people who are victims of homelessness can feel safe going to a shelter and can feel safe coming back and getting back on their feet. We need to protect the harassment and the bullying that happens to trans youth in schools, because many states still don't have explicit protections for trans kids in school. There's still rampant healthcare, employment, and housing discrimination, like I said. So the legislative priorities would be making sure that we don't get discriminated against and we can live authentically as ourselves, and we can get a job without getting fired for being trans, and we can go to the doctor without being harassed for being trans.
Yes, that is true. It is important to make sure that the LGBT spectrum, particularly around trans and intersex people, are the protected class that it needs to be, because as the numbers for this year show, this is an endangered community within the human experience. Veronika, legislative priorities for the betterment of trans people in 2021? Oh, you're muted, hold on. Oof. Hold on. Veronika is muted.
Okay, looking for her here, sorry. There we go. Veronika, you have to unmute.
Okay, I got it. Can you hear me now?
Cool. Yes.
Okay. There's been a lot of in California, there's been a lot of legislation. Scott Wiener passed some legislation and around trans issues and stuff. I think really the big thing for trans youth and trans people in general is the economic social justice part of it. There's no jobs. I'm not lucky. I planned to go to school. I went to school and I was in the service. So I became a nurse. I challenged my boards from that experience. But we need economic justice. It's too hard for trans people to not get a job and be judged by who you are. I've worked at places, and even though I was a nurse, they asked me the most bizarre questions like, how'd you get your license? And stupid stuff like that, because I was trans, but I don't care about all that. I still have my license. I was still a practicing nurse, so they couldn't take that away. So I think that education on a daily basis, calling bullies out when they bully people, when they cut in line in front of you, oh, you don't matter and all that stuff. Put them in their place. Tell them, excuse me, I'm here first. Stand up for yourself. Chances are, if somebody tries to harass you and beat you down, they're not just going to stand there and watch. If you're right, they know that the other person is wrong and they're going to stop them from hurting you. Don't let people hurt you. And if somebody attacks you, fight them back. The legislative process is one way. The other way is just to, like I said, live your truth. One thing, when I was in the service, I was gang raped, and they said, why didn't you tell somebody? Why would you possibly tell the person that probably might have even been one of your rapists? Why would you tell them? So the way that Trump pulled out the transgender protections and everything for the people in the service was horrible in itself. But also, why would anybody tell the person that is their assaulted? Does that say right? Assaultant, whoever assaults you, why would you tell them about your situation so that they can further assault you? So you have to be careful there. I think that as things move along, and we'll see what happens with this next administration, but people are aware, and as long as we're visible, there's a Transgender Day of Visibility also. So as long as we're visible, people know we exist. There's been things that have been done. Laverne Cox is trans and she made Time magazine. I'm the first trans nurse to ever work at San Quentin. Not that that's something to brag about, but I worked at San Quentin as a safety nurse when I felt so unsafe. But nonetheless, these are experiences that I have that share the knowledge and that I teach one, meet one, greet one, teach one. Everybody you come in contact with is a student to you. You talk to them, you just tell them. They say, oh, girl, how come you always have these cute guys? Well, because I'm trans and they love trans women, whatever, it doesn't matter. Just be true to yourself, stand up and fight for yourself. If you get a chance to be on an education panel, be on one. I've gone to schools and talked to students. You'd be amazed at the questions that students have. Some of them, I'm still shocked. I can't repeat them, but you want to educate as you go along and throughout your day, throughout your life. And sometimes when you get tired of it, just be quiet. You don't have to do nothing. You don't owe anybody anything, but you have rights, and exercise them.
Right, that is true. And a lot of people still to this day don't know their rights. I know that there's some things on your list, Cynthia, since you're primarily legislatively active most of the few years. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll say that, yes, we could wait and see what the next administration to take over this country is going to do, or we can be out in front asking when politeness might do, but demanding when it's not being respected. All right. What's that?
Move your phone up a little bit. You're shaking.
Oops, I'm sorry. I did say that I don't know what I'm looking at. Okay, but yes, we could wait for the next administration to be better on this. Or we can ask gently when it suits it, but demanding forcefully and loudly when it's not being respected. All right, full legal equality under the law, as one of the women's groups I've worked with says. That includes getting it so hospitals and other medical facilities stop committing non-consensual surgery on babies and kids for being intersex, banning that. Stronger hate crime laws, stronger punishments for people who commit hate crimes. That includes putting together some kind of oversight regulation for cops, from cops down to campus cops, down to whatever renter cops. Like I said before, just because they got a badge, they don't get a pass. They get punished just as much as anyone else does if they do this kind of hate or violence. Stopping so-called conversion therapy, which is aimed at trying to brainwash people to not be gay or trans. banning that in all 50 states, either nationally in one shot or across each of the 50 states. I'd rather it be in one shot, but it's always been a case of which happens first. Building on the Bostock v. Clayton decision, which Supreme Court just said, you can't fire a person from a job for being trans. We need to make that stick everywhere, in every walk of life, every profession. And I guess I could say I'm lucky because I live in New York right now, a state where we finally got trans rights and gender expression rights passed after a 16-year battle. But my adopted other home state is Michigan, and they don't fully have that there yet. We need full non-discrimination, full legal equality for LGBTQIA people and anyone whose life falls anywhere under sexual or gender or romantic diversity. And that needs to be everywhere in this country. It should not be a case of what state or what town can I be myself in, or my sisters or brothers or siblings get to. We need to make this full equality under the law.
Oh,
Anything else, Cynthia? I'm just trying to make sure because one of these questions answers were covered in 3 of y'all answers already, so I don't have to re-ask this question.
Don't worry, I think that I laid out a bunch of stuff. I'm sure there's other things. I mean, that's part of this is you always leave something out and you say later, oh, wow. But I'd like to think that's a decent legislative slate to go after in the next year.
That is true. We do need to make sure that the Equal Rights Amendment, when it is ratified, includes protections for the gender and neurodiverse. That is absolutely necessary. Okay, now this was covered a little bit when Avery spoke before, but I low-key want to ask the 2 older trans women here more because I know how Avery feels on this one. What y'all think schools can do better to support transgender students, and then we'll let Avery round it out. So Veronika, you go ahead with that one.
Okay, one of the things that we have here in San Francisco, and we have student panels that go to the schools and talk to the students. We send LGBT, one member from each category or a couple members, whoever can go to the speaker that are part of the Speakers Bureau. And they go to the schools. They have well, this is pre-pandemic. They would go to the schools and ask and introduce themselves and ask and answer questions of the students and give the students information that would help them. Like the suicide prevention hotline or whatever they needed to help them. And if they had a real problem, I would try to pull them aside afterwards and talk to them about it and try to steer them in the right direction that could best benefit them. But you know, that's the education part of it, and that's a big part of it. Shannel?
Right, thank you. Cynthia, do you have anything to add to that?
Oh yeah, Speakers Bureaus are a pretty good thing. I've been on a few, particularly at the college level, but we should have these at the high school, junior high, elementary. We should have people on staff who actually from the community, not some expert who's studied us, but somebody who actually lives this, who actually is the people that need to be given acceptance and understanding. Having explicit policies that say, this is how we encourage, this is how we empower, this is how we punish bullies when they try to bully or hurt other students. Making it clear also that this isn't just one day a year that we have the one piece of education on this for the school or the district or the system, but that this is an ongoing thing. And that's what I will say about every level of education, advocacy, and activism I do. This can't be one time a year. You can't hit and quit. This has to be ongoing, whether it's every day or every week or every month or every few months, just so you make sure this does not end in one shot. And yes, definitely making it clear that you are included, you are welcome, and that GSAs, Gay Straight Alliances, LGBT organizations on school campuses need to be made clear they are safe, protected spaces where your confidentiality is respected, so that experiences like what Avery's high school had, I want that a thing of the past. I want that to be bad history. I want to hear that from now on, that if you go to your school's LGBTA, whether it's from first grade to end of college, that you get to be yourself and you get to be as open and out as you want to be, or as you don't feel comfortable being yet. Nobody will push you to be out, and nobody will out you.
That is an important aspect of things that I wish we had more time to speak about, because I know that at least 1 in 3 people within the LGBT community have that terrible outing story that shocked them for life. Continuing on in that vein, unless you have something to add, Avery, do you have anything to add?
Well, yeah, I agree with absolutely everything that they said. I love the thing that Veronika was talking about in California with the representatives. One thing that I would love would be a social worker or a mental health counselor in that school who is who can specialize in LGBT issues, so that an LGBT student is comfortable with going to that counselor. And that specific counselor could be a representative and could be supportive of that LGBT student, again, without outing them, without telling their parents, whatever, and truly helping them with those feelings, because it is scary in high school to grow up with all these feelings and having nobody to talk to. So having a mental health counselor, having a social worker at school who can specialize in something like that would be great. And I would also love to see some sort of course, maybe in the health class, that focuses on gender and sexuality for students, so that every student can be educated in the classroom on gender and sexuality. I think that would go a long way in helping spread acceptance and supporting closeted queer kids and closeted trans kids and anybody who might not know why why they don't feel like a boy, or why they're attracted to the same gender, or kids who are just ignorant of the LGBT community could be educated better about gender and sexuality.
Right, like California recently changed its curriculum to ensure that from K through 12 students got age appropriate education on the genders, the sexuality, and the understanding of their bodies. Like they're starting teaching, like with proper naming, the good touch, bad touch stuff in kindergarten, because what was found when people looked at the data was that part of the reason that small children did not have the language to tell when someone was doing something horrible to them, particularly children who are disabled, was because they were never given the language. People thought that because they were little, or because they were a nonverbal autistic kid or whatever, that meant that they were not supposed to be told the proper names for their body parts to understand that this is a bad thing that's not supposed to happen. I believe, and I know that you agree, that if you provide children with the necessary information and treat them with the intelligence that they are gifted with, they will be able to easily understand these concepts. If they are not too small to see a movie where like two people, Becky and Ryan or whatever, fall in love, get married, express that relationship, it shouldn't matter the gender or gender identity of the person. Children understand more than you give them credit for, so please stop treating children like they don't have an understanding of how to comprehend things. That's how you get children not understanding that there are bad people in their midst, because they have not been taught that people are not supposed to do X, Y, Z because you want to use cute non-scientific names for things, because you want to call something by a name that because you want to misidentify things, people get hurt. And we're trying to change society so people don't get misidentified and the information is there so that people know how to protect themselves. And to that understanding of things, we have to then ask what we can do as, not trans people. Like, how can our family members and friends of trans people, what can they do to be helpful in showing acceptance to this endangered community that often doesn't feel loved? Whomever wants to start may do so.
I'll jump in. Is it age before beauty or whatever they say? I don't care. Anyway, the bottom line is, I've had my family, I've always been upfront with my family. I never came out because I was never in. They thought I was some kind of freak from another planet and they just treated me unusual. But I was molested when I was 3. And I remember the entire thing. I just couldn't put a face on who did it. Only when I was 33, I remembered who it was. It was my mother's cousin. But I didn't know any of that. And what Shannel said was really important, because if you tell kids lies, they're gonna believe it. Like my grandmother, when my father found Kotex in the closet, she told him it was a Band-Aid, and this was in the 40s. And so my grandmother ran out front because the men were making all this noise about my father. He had a Kotex on his forehead because he had hurt his head, and he thought it was a bandage because my grandmother had told him. So my aunt, who was an educator, said, that's why you don't lie to children. So instead of calling, and in our house, boys had a Johnny and girls had a Susie. What the hell is that? That's just a name. Those are not organs. I promise you, you can't find a Susie in any book where they're showing the vulva. I promise you that. So a woman's part. So you have to be honest. Shannel said that, and that is so true. But you need to make sure that the information that you impart to children is very important. Like I never talk about myself to kids. I asked my sister, I said, do you think I should say anything to them? She said, no, they're kids. They know they love you. That's all that's important. And that's true. So my biggest fans are my nieces and nephews. My grandson, when he was young, he's very bright, very matter-of-factly. Nan, I want to see so-and-so. And I said, you're only 3 years old. Why do you want to see Aliens versus Predators? And he said, because I like that part. And he was in his car seat. I was driving. I was looking in the rearview mirror. And he said, Nana, I like that part when they're in the sacrificial chamber. And my jaw just hit the steering wheel. Like, huh? You're 3 years old. What do you know about the sacrificial chamber? So like Shannel said, kids are brilliant. All you have to do is tell them the truth. Tell them the reality of things that instead of watching people make fun of other people, you say, that person is different because that's who they are. And then you teach them to respect that difference. That's important.
Do you have anything to add, Avery, or did you already speak on this?
To support trans family members, was that?
Or if it's easier, what advice would you have for someone that's exploring their gender identity at your age?
Okay. Well, wow, those are tough questions. Well, I would say for somebody who's exploring their gender identity right now, I'm gonna say don't rush it. Explore whatever you can at home, wherever you feel safe. If you can buy gender affirming clothing, try those on and see how you like yourself in those gender affirming clothes. You don't have to tell somebody what pronouns you want to try out, but if you want to refer to yourself with different pronouns in your head, you can try that out. You can see how you like that, see how you like these pronouns, and that's a good way to explore your gender identity. There's lots of great media on YouTube that you can look at. Samantha Lux is a trans YouTuber. There's lots of trans YouTubers. Noah Fintz is a trans man who's really cool. There's education on different gender identity things on YouTube. There are Discord servers to talk to other trans people. There's stuff on Reddit that are helpful to the trans community. So talking to other trans people online, if you can't talk to trans people in real life, I would say is a great way to explore your gender identity. If you can go to a therapist, if that's something that you can afford or is available to you, I would encourage going to a therapist. Make sure they're LGBT friendly. Most of them are, I would say. But talk to a therapist, talk to other trans people online, in person if you can, and explore in private your gender identity before you feel fully comfortable presenting in public or coming out. Yeah.
All right, you were frozen for a second, so I wasn't sure if you were done. But continuing along those lines, I know that thinking back, there are lots of different ways that Greens can do the work necessary to help our community. I know that, for instance, Greens who hold power, people who hold power in things like school boards and city councils can change the rules around, say, what sort of gender markers would appear on legal paperwork, for instance, just as an example, because I believe it was San Francisco or California on the whole that put the.
I was the one that was responsible for telling the epidemiology and surveillance when they're doing AIDS studies. I said we need to be on city documents as he, she, gender pronouns, and also trans. And they put male to female, female to male. Then they ask you your orientation, because orientation is different. Your gender is one thing, your orientation is another. Your gender is your spiritual self. Sex is totally different out of that picture. It has nothing to do with that. But you need to, when surveillance was covering that, they didn't cover it enough. And I said, put this information on documents, because there's more than just male and female. What about me? And if I'm not included in that, then how can I be part of this if I'm not included? So they changed that. It went citywide, it went statewide, and now it's national, where they put down other, or how do you identify, or whatever. So those are demographics. But it just started with me being angry at them for coming to the table. Every time we had a Ryan White Care Council meeting, epidemiology and surveillance would come and say, the trans are over here by the men, blah, 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 and with the men. I said, don't come here anymore with that BS. I want to see trans facts about trans getting HIV and AIDS. I don't want to see this I don't want to be lumped with anyone. I am my own person. However, in categories, when you talk about people, you need to talk about the real deal. I'm talking about trans people that are infected, or that may be infected, or that need to be checked. So they changed the orientation on paperwork. I got them to do it in the city, state, and it's everywhere now. Also in the jail system here was horrible. They just throw if you were trans and you went to jail, jail's nothing nice. I wouldn't recommend going if you don't have to. It's changed over the years, but it's still not nice. So be good to yourself and don't go to jail. But they were only providing services for men and women, but trans people were just thrown in the men's tank. So I got them to have a queen's tank. A queen's tank is for anybody that's gender non-conforming. So if you're trans, feminine, gay boy, whatever, they put them all in the Queen's tank. At least they'll be safe there. The same thing I was trying to do at San Quentin and at Rikers Island. When I worked there, I was a community associate for the New York City Health Department. And Rikers Island was a little bit better, but they would only allow us to, in the spread of HIV and AIDS, they would only allow us to give condoms to the LGBT population in that tank, in the Queen's tank, and not to the heterosexual people in the prison. And the heterosexual people, when I was demonstrating how to use condoms and put a condom on my hand, and this is a condom. And of course, all the guys in prison say, baby, I'll bust that open. I said, okay, well, look, this condom does this, it stretches and everything. So they said, we need it here. So I advocated for that because it doesn't, they think that if you give an inmate a condom, you're actually giving them a tool in which they can put 100 nickels and beat a correctional officer over the head. That is absolutely ridiculous. And inmates told me, they said, baby, we use saran wrap, we use whatever, but we try to protect ourselves. So there's still a long way to go with safety for HIV and AIDS, anything that's like this pandemic. Same thing. It's attacking marginalized communities, and it's attacking trans communities and Black communities and Latina communities and communities of color. It is devastating them. And we need to look out for that. We need to do everything in our power to make it safe to be who you are, be safe as a human being, and just be able to live your life to the best of your ability, because you deserve that. You're entitled to it. It's your life, and you are entitled to have joy and happiness in it. Enough said.
Right.
I'll just say one thing on the paperwork and stuff is that the Green Party national U.S. platform says in the sexual orientation gender identity plank that we support affirming accurate to people's identity and lived experience language and options on legal paperwork, that trans women get to be able to say we're women, that trans men get to be able to say they're men, that the language in our platform actually says gender fluid, non-binary, as well as I said, trans women being called women, trans men being called men. That is all said explicitly in our platform. We need to remember that. And any of us, as Shannel said, who in any position of authority need to make it clear that at whatever school board, political, legal level, that we're going to make sure that all this stuff gets made affirming.
That's actually the perfect segue to my next question, which is for you at least to start. Can we just like punch home why it is so important that people use the appropriate terms of respecting people's gender? Like why? I know that this is a silly question, but I'm gonna ask it just so we're clear. Why is it so important to make proper use of someone's preferred name or pronouns, just for those who maybe got here late or weren't paying attention?
First of all, it's basic respect. You call someone what they want to be called. Whatever name they say they are, you use that name or use whatever title they say that you're supposed to be using for them. If they have a title that's legal, religious, political, medical, psychological, or whatever, you refer to people as they know they are and as they're supposed to be. And this is about not just basic respect, but affirmation, particularly if you're a younger trans, intersex, non-binary, non-conforming person. It's a major thing when people are dead naming you, when people are saying you don't get to be yourself. That sends messages of pain, shame, fear, terror, and emotional violence that can feed into physical violence. I will say that almost every killing of a trans woman I've heard about in the last 50 years that I've been researching, almost every killer has said about a trans woman, it wasn't a woman. No, that's depersonalizing, that's dehumanizing, that's reducing a person to an object, like the iPhone that I'm currently slapping in my hand. No, you talk about human people as human people, or else you run the risk of feeding a culture of violence, discrimination, and outright just delegitimizing that can add to things like murder and suicide. We're not going there, and we're going to call people what they are, both for that reason and just because it's the right and polite and respectful thing to do.
Yeah, and oh, sorry, are you done, Cynthia?
Certainly.
Sure.
I want to hear you.
Yeah, regarding names and pronouns. Well, my dead name, well, that's exactly what it is. It's a dead name. That does not represent who I am anymore. That is a piece of me that I don't want anymore. I am Avery. I am not my dead name. And I use she, her. You know, I have dead pronouns, I guess you could say. He, him are dead pronouns. So when I have people referring to me with my dead name or using he, him pronouns, that outright right there, they are telling me that we don't see you as we don't see you as you see yourself. You know, we see you as your dead name. We see you as a man, you know, and, you know, I have gender dysphoria. So, you know, you're telling me you're not supporting me. You're not, you're triggering my gender dysphoria. And, you know, it's just, I don't feel comfortable around you when you're not using my name and my pronouns, because you are telling me that you don't respect me as who I am. So yeah, and if you have somebody who's recently come out as trans in your life, you know, of course, use the right name and pronouns. You are going to slip up, but just correct yourself and move on. Do not make a huge deal out of it. If you say he, just be like, oh, sorry, she, move on. And don't make a big deal out of it. And of course, do not purposely use the wrong pronouns. But yeah, just try your hardest to use the right pronouns. Try your hardest to use the right name. And because that's who they are. Their new name, that's them. I am Avery. I am not my dead name. And I am a woman. So respect that and show me that you see me how I see myself. That's why names and pronouns are so important.
Right. It's kind of like what they say about some of the exotic names that we give ourselves in communities of color, in communities of culture. They say if they can learn to pronounce the names of these classical composers, then they should not have a hard time, you know, pronouncing Rashitia or LaQuisha or something to that effect. If they can know that freaking Elon Musk kid's name is a math problem, but they'll call him by what Elon Musk said his name is because Elon Musk is famous, they should not have any trouble calling Avery by her name. That's just, you know how it is. You know whether or not people are willing to respect you, if they are willing to like take the time to make that step to know how to address you. It's basic respect. And I mean, as Veronika stated, and I just want to double here for all the young trans people that might be listening. If someone is trying to disrespect you by not speaking your name, you don't have to answer. You don't have to answer, and you don't have to keep that person in your life. This is 2020. We're going into 2022. We're cutting off toxic people, and we are leaving the dead weight behind. That is what we're doing, because coming into this next year, the community of women and queer people, we're lifting each other up. We are, you know, having that love for each other, recognizing that we need to come together to keep each other strong in this dangerous time for us. But with all that stated, I want to like take the time now to really just let our esteemed panelists let you know, like, final thoughts so that you know what you can take out of this and what sort of affirmations that you, as a woman who's trying to lift up her fellow woman, or a green who's trying to lift up her fellow, his, her, or their fellow green, can do, just to, the last thing that they want you to know as we end this somber day where we're thinking about the 350 plus people across the world we've lost to the violence rooted in capitalism and misogyny. Like, just final thoughts or final affirmations, however you guys want to take it. You can go ahead and finish that off, Veronika.
Oh, this is one time I wanted to be last, but I will
Oh,
say,
okay.
no,
fine.
wait, I'm flexible. You know, I'm that kind of girl. Hey,
I know you're flexible, but if you prefer to have last words, we can do that. That's not a problem.
okay, but I can give them now. It was just
All right.
it's just one of those things. So my final thoughts are that if we are going to have a party of respect, if we're going to have human respect for one another, and if we're going to stand on the pillars and the shoulders of those that came before us, and blah, 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 all that matters. The bottom line is you have to care about another human being. When you interact with somebody, just remember, no matter how they appear to you, if you're unsure of how to address them, ask them. Hello? Ask them. How hard is that to say, excuse me, how should I address you? I'm confused. I want to address you properly. Is it okay to call you her? Or what would you like me to call you? That gets bonus points because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to ask them if you're in doubt. Don't say, oh, excuse me, sir. And then the woman turns around and says, I'm a woman. I got 5 kids. And, you're like, whoa, okay. Well, I'm sorry, miss. I didn't mean to disrespect you. So instead of going through that, you don't disrespect anybody. You just tell them or ask them who they are. Who are you? Well, how do you want to be addressed? What should I call you? Your name is Avery. Is it okay if I call you A? Or whatever. And then if Avery says, no, I prefer you call me Avery, then that's what I'm going to do. When you tell people how you feel, when you tell them what is your truth, and they continue to disrespect you, if I say, don't call me Joe, my name is Veronika. And then every time I see them, they call me, hey, Joe. Well, that means they're saying, screw you. And that's being kind. It's really fuck you. They're saying, fuck you. So if they're saying that to you, get your scissors out and cut them out of your life. You don't have to have them in. Don't take disrespect. If they're openly disrespecting you, put a halt to it. You don't have to take it. Bottom line, that's my final thoughts. And take care of yourself and your mental health. And I know it's hard with this pandemic. There's seasonal affective disorder on top of this pandemic, but you'll make it through. Just wear a mask, protect yourself, be safe, and be kind to those people that you interact with because they need kindness. We live in a depressed society. Everybody's depressed. Nobody's not depressed. Don't let them fool you. Everybody's depressed. We live in a depressed society, and we're all trying to climb out of it. And this is the time, and these are the ways that we can do that, by respecting one another, calling one another by the names they wish to be called, and supporting one another, period. Final words. Thank you.
Final thoughts, Avery?
Yeah, I just want to say there is a huge problem of mental illness amongst trans youth. Like I said before, I do not know a trans person who hasn't been diagnosed with severe depression or self-harmed or attempted suicide or been admitted to a psychiatric facility. And a big part of that is that they do not feel supported at home. They don't feel supported at school. And we feel very alone as trans people, as trans youth. So the best thing to do to support trans people is to just show them that you're there, that you respect their identity, that you will get them, that you will help them as much as you can, that you're not going to harass them. And, you know, that support could save a life. By showing a young trans person that you are there for them, that you will walk them through this journey, and that you're not going to leave them, that you're not going to hurt them. Well, that's the best thing you could do. That will save a trans person's life. So I would say that, you know, and if you are a young trans person, you know, it's tough trying to navigate all of this in high school, and it's tough trying to figure all this out by yourself. So if you can talk to somebody in real life, talk to somebody in real life. If not, there are plenty of online spaces that are great for you as a young trans person, and I would encourage you to discover those places. And just know that there are people who support you, that you are absolutely valid, and that you can make this. The fact that you're existing as a young trans person is powerful and strong and amazing. And you know, I really hope that we can all find a way to support all of us and support ourselves as well, so that we can live in a better world.
Yes, I feel that. To that credit, the Lavender Caucus has its own Discord because we, you know, support each other in online spaces. And I'm pretty sure every marginalized community has something like that. Find your online spaces, those long distance people in your life that protect you and help you feel better. Everybody has it and everyone needs something like that. So go ahead, close us out, Cynthia. What are final thoughts here, things that you want to leave the audience with, etc., to get us to, I guess, 7:55 or whatever. Sorry, 6:55. I'm looking at my clock wrong. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Okay. I'll say that we've covered a lot tonight, and not all of it's been cuddly. Thanksgiving's coming up in a handful of days, and I don't know if everybody here celebrates. I will say it in my own life, because of what I've been through, I celebrate, okay, my family may be clueless, but they're loving. So I celebrate having them in my life. I celebrate all my friends and allies in my life. I also celebrate that my name has never had to be read on the list of names that we're reading. And I take the fact I'm still alive and able to do the advocacy and education I do as a responsibility to show this kind of truth to people, that we can be ourselves, that we can be safe, that we can be proud, we can be powerful. And yeah, there is a lot of work to do, and some of it's going to be hard, and some of it's not going to be fun, but we are together. We all care about this. So that's going to make it a lot easier than just one of us doing this. So this is the cliche about we all come together, we all pull together, many hands making light work, and insert every other cliche from every feel-good movie in there, because we are going to feel good when we realize we're all coming together and working together to walk this party to being more open and accepting and working on better equality and rights so people can live their lives powerfully and proudly, and also to simply be a community for each other, both as Greens and as people. We can do this. We are doing this. The fact that we're here tonight shows that we are doing this. Let's keep doing this. Let's have this not be the end of any story of what we're doing, but just a beginning.
Yes. Does anyone have anything else to say before we close this out? Because we can end early. It's perfectly fine.
I wanted to say one thing.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to thank everybody, the Women's Caucus, the Youth Caucus, every caucus we have. And I just want to thank all the panelists for bringing this together. And I want to thank Cynthia, Brian, Kate for asking me to be a part of this group. And I want to thank you. And I want to thank all of the hosts. And I want to thank all of the people that are paying attention to this, because knowledge is power and you've just gained some. Ciao.
Oh yeah, I definitely want to thank everybody that put this together, all the caucuses that helped, all the amazing people. I want to thank Shannel for doing all the MC work on this. I want to thank Dawn Marie for the organizing. I want to thank Avery and Veronika for being on this panel with me. Again, everybody in the Women's Caucus and the Black Caucus, the Lavender Caucus, Disability Caucus that were part of putting this on. I look forward to doing more work on education and 101 and advocacy, doing and feature webinars, feature panels, feature whatever people want to do. Is there anything that we didn't get to address? Anything that anyone is asking that we got a couple minutes and say, why didn't we go there yet?
Not that my notes show. I know they'll come up later, but that's why we'll have more of these. This was kind of a reminder of what it is that the trans community is dealing with, and a general like one-on-one on the issue, if nothing else. With that stated, I want to remind everyone under the sound of my voice, as I once again thank the National Women's Caucus for allowing us to take this time and this space to reach out to them and, you know, to uplift our fallen sisters, that here in the Green Party, this is part of what we do. If you are like confused on that, you got to remember that, you know, the kind of equality the Greens fight for is not just for certain people in a cookie cutter box. And, you know, to everyone else on the sound of my voice, most of y'all are Greens, but those of y'all that are not, you know that you got a home here. As, you know, a Black person, a Latina and Latinx person, a queer person, a young person, you got a specific space here within this party to learn and grow and understand how the politics of doing right by the planet and people, how it manifests. The Green Party platform is this thing that is not one size fits all, but if applied, these 10 key values and 4 pillars will keep everyone safe and everyone healthy. And as we come out of this, this moment with our wonderful trans panelists, remembering how and knowing how and learning how to, you know, fight to make sure that the world we exist in is not a world that continues to move from the world beautiful, brilliant trans people, beautiful, brilliant, marginalized people. If you want to find out more information about how the Green Party approaches these issues, you can figure it out by going to gp.org or your state party website if you know what it is. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for putting up with me. I'm sorry that my nerves were particularly insane tonight. Like they were kind of all over the place because I've never spoken at anything this important. Thank you, Veronika.
Thank you for being the MC, because you were fabulous.
Yeah, you were great.
Yeah.
Y'all don't have to lie. It's fine. I'm capable of better work, but I'm glad that I was able to help put this together. For me, it's important, once again, that we as Greens, as people, not let anyone try to use bigotry to divide us, because they're trying that everywhere. But we know, because we Greens and our hearts tell us that we need to keep people defended and safe, that we're going to do all that we can to make sure that the list for 2021 is not 350 people long. Take your time with this. Know that today is heavy, a lot of loss of life here, but you can be the person that helps to prevent the next loss of life, that we're not losing people because we're not losing people forever as long as their memory is still here. And we can create a world where this is not the case anymore. Thank y'all so much for your time. I'm gonna go ahead.
About said by
Anything
one
else?
of shamans I know, Raven Caldera said at a transgender ritual, "May the flood of this violence and murder be slowed to a trickle, to a drip, and may the faucet be turned off to stop it."
And I just like to say, Black trans life matters. And Black trans lives matter. But I say Black trans life matters because I have started a organization that says that, because I'm not dead, not yet. And I'm not trying to die early. I want to live my fullest life, and I want you all to share in it. And so we want every trans person to lift each other up. We want everybody to support one another, period. There you go. That's my end.
Yes. So make your goal turning off that faucet. And with that, I'm gonna say good night. Thank you guys.
Night, everyone.
Night,
Thank
thank you.
Good night.